We hear much about love. This gospel we've had today is a tale, a parable about the ambiguities of love. And it contains much guidance for us. Love we can take to be an attachment. To love something or someone means to be attached to them. And this has a range of meanings. You might love a pint of beer. You might love your country. You might love your parents. You might love your spouse. You might love your enemies. Now, those are different kinds of love, but they're related. They're all attachments, but not at the same level. And that's where the ambiguity of love begins. Just to say, I am attached to something, to someone, I love them, is the beginning of the understanding. And it's the beginning of the ambiguity of love. In itself, love neither leads to good nor to bad. It all depends on what you're attached to, how you're attached to it, and why. And on that will depend if love is a virtue or not. Just to say, I am very attached to something or someone does not lead to love as a virtue. It just leads to a strong attachment to perhaps something, someone we shouldn't be. So in itself, to say I love someone, I am attached to something, won't give us the truth. And today's gospel must be one of the strongest guidance we have, exactly on that. The owner is attached to the vineyard, loves his vineyard. The tenants are attached to the vineyard. They too love the vineyard. But the landowner owns the land, it's his, and he cares for it. The tenants, their attachment to the vineyard is greed, and they're prepared to kill for it, and they do kill. So we see the ambiguity of love, the ambiguity of attachments. From the owner's point of view, and we were given that wonderful poem, a love song as it calls it, from Isaiah about the vineyard. And the owner loves his enemies, the tenants. He is forgiving, he is merciful, more than once. And mercy and forgiveness are two of the faces of real love. But notice how they're connected. The more the owner loves them, the more they oppose him. It's rather like sunshine and shadows. The stronger the sunlight, the deeper the shadow. The weaker the sunlight, the weaker the shadow. It's only strong light, when it meets an obstacle, that produces shadow. And that's what today's gospel is. There's strong, real, truthful love, merciful love of the owner, in a strange way, generates escalating violence against him. The murder of his servants, and in the end, the murder of his son. which means that perhaps some of our ideas about love are rather misleading. How come that real love generates so much opposition? Who would want to attack a loving person? Well, because real love purifies, because it brings truth with it, and we don't always want that. The landowner kept sending servants, and in the end his son, because he wanted in his love to dislodge from the hearts of those tenants wickedness and injustice and greed. And they did not want that, because their love for the vineyard, their attachment was at fault. And so they resented and resisted any attempt to purify their love for the vineyard. So they're not so unconnected. The greater the love, real love, by the owner, the greater the resistance and opposition by the tenants, because love keeps its ambiguity. It's only a virtue if the attachment is to goodness. If it isn't, then it's just an attachment of a wrong sort. And intensity in love doesn't substitute truthfulness. We can't say, because I love this very much, there's no more to be said. That's in fact just the beginning of what could be an ambiguous kind of love. So as always, the gospel, ultra-realistic, 100 times more realistic than most of us are most of the time. And is not then, once love is understood as an ambiguous attachment, it's not odd then that as the landowner, here God, it's a parable after all, the more he loves the tenants, the more mercy he shows them, the more forgiveness he shows them to purify them, the more they're hostile to him. And of course, in the murdered son, we're to see Christ. And then we begin to see why, when real love comes in a fallen world, it's not always welcome, although precious.